Askreddit Asks police officers of Reddit, who's the smartest criminal you've ever encountered?
Most of them are really stupid, so this guy isn't a criminal mastermind, but here goes. He wanted to rob a jeweler's on our city's main street. So he found out the flat beside the jeweler's was empty and he hid there. For 2 weeks he triggered the alarm on purpose several times a night. Massive headache for the police and the business. We turned up to see nothing there. Nothing on cameras. Thought it was just a fluke, so the jewelers turned off the alarm system and said they'd wait until the morning to get a new one installed or that one rewired because something wasn't right. As soon as he heard that and the police leaving, he tore down the wall, had already been working on this apparently, and robbed the place taking his sweet time. Escaped without anyone noticing anything for hours. Until the jewelers came back in the morning. Then he tried to resell something he stole which had a serial number on it and got caught. So not that smart after all. Good effort though.
He did all the hard work pretty well.
A friend of my brother moved to Israel where for a period of time is acceptable to drive with an American driver's license. He was pulled over for speeding, and when asked for his license, gave the officer his Costco card. Costco is a membership-based retail warehouse in the US and a few other countries. The exchange apparently went something like this. Officer: Costco? What is Costco? Friend: it's the state I'm from. Officer: that sounds made up. Friend: there are lots of states you probably haven't heard of. Have you heard of Arkansas? How about Idaho? Officer: I guess not. Friend: well, I'm from the small state of Costco. The officer didn't have a response and wound up writing the ticket to someone with a Costco driver's license. Friend framed the ticket and still has it hanging on his wall.
Well, there was this one guy. We'll call him Jack. Now, Jack stole stuff but also involved a lot of people. One time, he was planning to steal a whole bunch of cars. All luxury cars. So what he did, was he got his people to call 911, etc., from all different places, and countries, to tell them that car theft was taking place in multiple places. Oh, he also only used a few people each time. So it was different voices, people, locations, etc., so the police went each time. Until he actually did the crime. Then no one came. He was never caught. When the owner of those cars came, the police didn't believe him. 10 out of 10 genius right there.
The story goes like this. A homeowner walks out one morning to drive to work only to find his car missing. He reports the car stolen to police. A few days later, his car is sitting back in front of his house. When he gets inside, he finds a note. It was an apology that said the thief was in dire need of quick transportation and so he borrowed the first car he found with the keys inside. The writer noticed the sticker on the car for the local sports team. And just so there were no hard feelings, he left 4 tickets to an upcoming game in the glove box for the homeowner and his family. So the homeowner and his family attend the game. But when they return home, they find the house has been ransacked and all items of value are gone. Edit. Some of you have noted this is an urban legend. Which is true. It is also true that some urban legends have a basis in fact. https www.rd.com/culture/true-urban-legends/closing parenthesis.
In Europe right now there is a series of burglary of professional football players during game nights.
There was a guy with over 50 speeding charges, with the name Jazdy. He was in a different car, with a different disguise every single time. Eventually, after the government set up a special task force to take down this guy, they realized that Jazdy means driver's license in Polish. Clarification: it was 50 different people. The police just wrote down their name as Jazdy every time someone with a Polish driver's license was caught speeding.
I suspect he might be an associate of someone that goes by Hermano.
There's a small tourist town where I grew up that is divided in half by a big river. The only way between the two sides is over a long bridge. Unless you go all the way around another mountain pass. These guys called in, like, 2 to 3 bomb threats to a posh hotel on one side of the bridge. I think they even left some dummy packages. All the police went across the bridge to do crowd control, etc., etc. The guys then called in a bomb threat on the bridge and started robbing stuff on the other side. The police couldn't be positive the bomb threat was real or not and hesitated long enough to give the thieves a head start. I first heard this story about 10 years ago. In Banff, Alberta. Never bothered to look up what was real versus what is invented. I think this is pretty close. But as my father used to say, you can't let truth get in the way of a good story. Wow, 24k upvotes. Thanks folks. Folded hands.
Working in a home improvement store when younger. This guy came in, went to the snowblowers, took one and went to the return desk. Said he wanted to return it but had no receipt. They told him you need a receipt, so he says okay, I'll be back, and wheels it off to car through the front door. He did this a few times apparently. Couple places even helped him load it back into his car.
Homeless guy in my hometown figured out if he committed some act of petty theft he'd get a night in jail. A warm place to sleep and a hot meal. He'd show up, turn in his stolen goods, and that would be that. After a while the police would just tell him to take back whatever he stole the next day. Quite the town character.
We have a regular homeless guy where I work that will walk in the front door, collapse, and scream for someone to call 911. Then the ambulance takes him to the hospital where he gets dinner and a warm bed. He does this about once a week all winter long to various businesses downtown.
A French thief who spent 10 years in prison became a comedian when he got out. One of his stories: finds a building, goes in, chooses a floor and transforms the exit door into an extra apartment. Puts the apartment number, fake lock, welcome rug, etc. Puts an iPhone for sale. The person comes to buy it. He opens the door in a shower robe and says, "Give me 1 second. I'm just gonna count the money." And poof, he's gone from the exit stairs.
This seems like exactly the kind of crime a comedian would commit.
Not a police officer, but was in RA in college. My university owned all the houses adjacent to campus. These were ran like dorms, with RAS and the same rules, which included a very strict no alcohol policy. It was a privilege to live in the houses, and priority was given to upperclassmen who were more likely to bend that rule because they were of age, and it was harder to police off campus in houses. There was a student who went around knocking on doors saying something like, "I'm an RA and housing director's name, send me for health and wellness checks." She'd find the booze, take it, and follow up with how she's doing him a favor by just giving him a warning. She wasn't actually an RA and was just keeping the booze for herself. The only reason she got found out was because she did it to an actual RA. The RA was male, they kept men and women housing separate, and just assumed he didn't know her because of that. It was only later he questioned why they had a female doing wellness checks on male housing. They did an investigation and asked other residents. Incidents dated back previous 2 years. Never found out who it was.
Probably someone who committed a crime I never solved. With that being said, I had a guy use a sledgehammer to smash his way through a wall at a Best Buy and steal a bunch of phones and cameras. He was smart enough to wear gloves and a face mask and not touch anything he didn't have to. Alarms didn't go off until he exited out the back door, which the alarm company gets after a minute or two, and takes them like 3/4 of a minute to call in to us, giving him a good 5-minute head start, so he was probably a few miles away before we got dispatched to it. He clearly scoped out the area before doing his deed too. Smart dude. Edit. So part of the building was built into a hill. So the hole was on the back side of the building along the grade line, but when you're inside the building it was about 8 feet up. So it was easier for him to leave out a door. Also the wall section where he broke through was hollow cement block. The portion of the wall below that was poured concrete. I just keep thinking about Sledge from Rainbow Six Siege.
A guy, let's call him Dave, I work with told this story. He was working at a Mercedes dealership. He was sitting at his desk when this well-dressed gentleman comes in and asks if he could test drive a specific car that was parked out front. It was also a busy day. Usually they are allowed to let people test drive by themselves after they have taken some form of a deposit or something, maybe the official ID or something. Not really relevant. So Dave gives out the keys. The guy goes on his test drive and comes back a reasonable amount of time later. He walks in and hands off the key. Gets his deposit, whatever back. This was about closing time. Even possibly on a Friday. Everything is in order. Fast forward to the next business day. Dave's boss walks in and realizes that one of the Mercedes out front is gone. Dave has to explain that the car was returned and that they have the key and everything. Turns out the criminal didn't test drive. He drove somewhere to create a replica of the key and gave that replica back to the desk. He kept the real key. That smart son of a bitch. Edit. Dave is not the criminal. He is the employee. Apparently people think Dave is the criminal. Edit 2. It was probably part of this https. www. Augsburger Allgemeine. Der Augsburg Autodiebstahl wie der Schuhseltrick Offlog ID 39543832. HTML group. Edit 3. Okay, maybe the key wasn't copied but switched or something. I didn't put much thought into the details of the story since Dave told me this story a few years ago. I also don't know much about key security on modern cars.
He did all the hard work pretty well. AIDK. The hardest part about stealing high-dollar goods is selling the merch. Edit. Of course my top comment is about criminal activity. Thanks Reddit.
Yep, and unless you're lucky or find someone stupid enough to buy stolen goods for full retail price, you're going to be fencing them at a heavy discount.
It is very similar to Phantom of Heilbronn. http://n wikipedia.org/wiki/phantom_of_Heilbronn . German police were looking for a serial killer who had left DNA traces at over 40 crime scenes all over Europe, only to find that the DNA belonged to a woman who worked at the factory that made the cotton swabs used for collecting DNA samples. Jesus Christ, that would be so deflating to be working that case and come to that conclusion.
Mastermind criminal killing people and tainting the CSI kit with her own DNA.
Not a policeman here, but I have a nice story from insurance debt collectors. There was this guy who was already in heaps of debt. Like more than a lifetime's worth of debt. He proceeded to file several police reports for identity theft up to the point that he got protected from financial checkups. It was a temporary measure that were given to repeated identity theft victims. At the same time, he had reported fake income to the IRS for the last couple of years to between 40 to 60 millions depending on the year. So when he applied for credit cards and loans, they were unable to check his financial credit due to the identity theft protection, but they checked his tax returns which showed he had a massive income. Got his loans and credit cards, emptied them out and left the country.
That's a good way to finance emigrating out of a third world country.
Reminds me of a family friend of mine. Very funny Australian with an absolutely horrendous bogan accent. Well, late 80s he's driving through Texas and runs a red light. And is immediately pulled over by a 250-pound Texan police officer with an equally horrendous accent. The way the stories goes, this man is obviously not the brightest chap. So our friend, when asked about running the red light, gets very apologetic and explains that he gets easily confused because in Australia, you know how things are revers down there, red means go and green means stop. The cop actually let this man go with a warning, I did not know that. Well, in America, red means stop, so don't make this mistake again.
Literally sounds like a bit from The Simpsons. Hilarious. That's German for the Bart.
Definitely, this guy. https www.youtube.com/watch v=lmnux_WNQRE, who ate the bank robbery note right off the hood of the police car when they were emptying his pockets. Although I'm fairly sure he was still convicted. LMAO his face. Pretty sure this dude could star in an Always Sunny in Philadelphia episode. Edit. YouTube. B81SFWBETGC.
He sort of used the boy who cried wolf story in real life to his advantage.
The damn wolf learned to cry wolf.
Now I want to write a short story about mimicking monsters crying for help so often their real victims are ignored or drowned out.
SCP-939 cries for help to murder incoming victims instead.
This was in the late 90s early 00. A guy in my dorm came to school solely to deal drugs. He took out student loans, registered for a bunch of 300-person freshman survey courses where he would never be missed. Then literally never went to class. All he did was go to raves and concerts and keggers and sell party drugs. After the first semester, he was suspended. He wrote the usual, "I was young and dumb and in over my head" sob story, and got put on probation for a semester. So he had a repeat of the fall. At the end of the year, he was kicked out, and didn't care. He made something on the order of $150,000. In return for about $8,000 in student loans to cover a year of housing and tuition. So far as I know, he was never caught. It may have been a short-sighted maneuver in the long run. But in the short run it seemed fairly genius to effectively use federal loans to start your drug business.
Not a police officer, but I once dealt with a criminal who forged court documents facilitating his own release from prison. Edit. Wow, my first silver. Thank you, kind stranger. Edit. Oh my goodness. Thank you for the gold. My first silver and my first gold in one day.
Learns about smartest criminals becomes smartest criminal himself.
The smartest criminals are the ones the cops don't know about.
Shush.
Because they are the cops. I always laugh when somebody names a character and then proceeds to never use the name. Nice catch.
I laughed too. I was gonna read back and check because I wasn't paying attention. But then I didn't.
Not a cop. There was an incident in Fargo, North Dakota where a guy wanted to steal electronics equipment. The store had plenty of alarms on it and generally cutting an alarm triggers an alarm, so instead he cut all the alarms. This was before cell phones were really widespread and alarms were usually just connected to the phone line. He found an access point to one of the phone company's big trunk lines. Correction. 9 access points. Massive thick copper cables with tens of thousands of lines running through them. He cut through the whole thing with a circular saw. Knocked out phone service to most of the town and robbed an audio store during the ensuing chaos. There were no leads until a tip came in from another town where he'd pulled something similar. They hadn't been able to pin that to him but had strong suspicions and he'd relocated to Fargo. So the cops pay him a visit. He refused to let them in because they didn't have a warrant, so the cops left to get one without leaving anyone to watch him and he split. When they came back they found the saw coated in copper dust and a lot of the stolen stuff. He was in the wind for a while, but even after he got caught he had another card to play. While being transported between prisons he used a key he'd made to unlock his shackles and climbed out the roof vent of the bus. Edit. Went looking for the news articles but found the case. https. Caselaw. finlaw.com/nd-supreme-court/1266964. HTML. This seems like exactly the kind of crime a comedian would commit.
I mean, it is kind of funny. Well, to everyone but the person who got screwed. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe to support the channel, and above all, have an excellent day you marvelous people.